There we go, we should be recording. Lovely, thank you. So welcome to the Jigsaw Showcase. I know that a couple of you certainly are familiar with the Jigsaw, so Donna and Sarah are both actually certified facilitators with Jigsaw. But for other people, perhaps you haven't seen it or aren't as familiar. So I'll kind of go back a little bit and just kind of give you a little bit of the history so that it makes a bit more sense when I start to go on and show you the digital resources. Jigsaw actually came about quite simply that some 20-some years ago now, myself and my then business partner, a gentleman called Keith Nicholson, we were friends, old family friends, etc. And we just happened to have a conversation one day where we both actually said that we were looking for something else in life, basically. Our careers had gone as far as they could go within the sectors that we were, and we were looking for something different. And without boring you with the whole long story, basically, eventually, months later, we decided that we wanted to do something within learning and development, and we decided that what we would do is set up our own learning development company. But before that, because we didn't actually have any qualifications as such, and we weren't working within the L&D industry itself, what we decided to do was to go back to university, and we did our CIPD at Huddersfield University. So we then set about setting up the business, which in actually the early days was not called Jigsaw at all. It was called Shadow Associates. And we were very conscious in those days that at that time we were a two-person L&D business working out of a back bedroom in Wakefield. And why would anybody really want to talk to us? What did we have that would differentiate us within the marketplace? And I'd actually kind of many years previous, because my original career was in hospitality, many years previously, I had, whilst working in the hospitality sector, I'd actually had a very poor experience with one of the big name psychometric tools. Now, I've got to say that it was no reflection whatsoever on the psychometric tool. It was a case of, it was, and I'm going to use this word deliberately, administered, and that's really what it was, administered by an untrained facilitator, L&D. Well, they weren't even an L&D person, they were a general manager, basically. And he just had done it himself, thought this is great, got a lot out of it, and decided to put all 200 staff through it. In those days, it was pen and paper. It wasn't computers or anything like that. So there we all were given a questionnaire, 100-question questionnaire to complete. 2 weeks later, in our pigeonholes one morning, there appeared a report. And for me, I absolutely loved it and got so much out of it. And it actually spurred me to go on and study psychology. And I did a degree in psychology and added some sociology on as well. So I'd got this kind of passion, shall we say, interest, hunger around human behaviour. And so when we were having this conversation about, you know, we need to differentiate ourselves, we at that time had noticed that there was a gap in the market. There was the big name tools with the very in-depth kind of profiles about people. Then you've got this gap, and then the other end of the market, there were all the kind of the card game type. What animal are you, for example, things like that. And we said we were actually working in a marketplace at that time who were very used to words, but the actual questionnaires, actually they found intimidating. So we said there's got to be another way of doing this. So I went back to Carl Jung's original work. Now, Carl Jung is really at the foundation of most of the tools that are out there on the marketplace. There's an odd one or two that aren't, but the majority are based somewhere originally rooted in Carl Jung's work. So I went back to his original works, and that was the hardest thing I've ever done. Written in the 1800s, in German, translated into Old English, and then you try and read it. And it was, but I did it. And then started looking at all the other things that had kind of come along, all the other psychological theories around behaviour, etc. So some of Eysink's work, Richard Hayer's work, Catherine Benzinger, for example, looked at all those kind of studies and said, okay, so what can I pull from this? And I pulled together what is now really at the core of the Jigsaw. We've developed it and it's grown much more since, but it was kind of what is at the core of the Jigsaw. So then I came back to my business partner, Keith, and said, okay, that's the theory. Now you come up with a way of delivering this that is non-threatening, that is interactive, no questionnaires, that people can engage with. And months later, one morning he came into the office and said, I've got it, we do it using jigsaws. So the Jigsaw was born, and in those early days we sat at home cutting out pieces of jigsaw out of card with little nail scissors on an evening, and that's how Jigsaw became was created initially. It wasn't until a couple of years later that we went to one of the big it was actually called the HRD Learning Development Show in London, that we actually had any wooden jigsaws made, and we went to that show. At that stage still, most of it was in my head, the theory. We had some 4-piece wooden jigsaws made, we took them to the show, and within the first 10 minutes we'd had the first people on the stand saying, how can we get hold of this tool? And we took a year out when we came back from the show because we'd got so many inquiries. We took a year out and we developed it and went back the following year and officially launched it. And so now it's licensed around the world. So pre-COVID, up to March of this year, when you kind of license a jigsaw, if you attended a workshop of jigsaws, then what happened is you were guided through by a facilitator in a classroom situation, a workshop situation, guided through a number of activities. And I'll kind of show you some of those activities in the digital version as we go through. But ultimately, everybody in the workshop got I have to be careful, I'll hold this up. I'm going to take my virtual screen off because it makes life so much easier. So please excuse the background of the office. That's all I will say. So just let me move that. Is it gone? Yeah, okay. So now you have got. So everybody got a workbook. And we've now digitized this, so this is what one of the things we'll show today. And then on top of that, everybody would get a black bag. Oops, that way. So a black bag. Inside the black bag were 2 things: a baseboard, so the baseboard that everybody got, and then a red bag, which inside the red bag there were 64 pieces of jigsaw. Now that's actually got Arabic on it as well, but obviously we've got ones with just English on. So there were 64 pieces of jigsaw. So everybody got those materials and were guided through a number of activities until they created their own behavioural profile. So that's kind of how it used to be done. Then COVID came along, so then it's a case of how are we going to be able to enable our licensees around the world to be able to continue delivering the jigsaw. And so we developed the digital materials we'll show you that today. So I'm going to start and share my screen. Now the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take you actually, and I'll kind of walk you through the actual jigsaw delivery, the kind of the workshop, and we'll look at some of the activities and things along the way. And then following the workshop, I'll send you all a link to the digital workbook, and you can actually have a play with the digital jigsaw yourself after the workshop. So that's the kind of way we do it. If there's any questions as we go through, please unmute yourself, ask your questions, stick a hand up, do whatever. That's absolutely fine. Please stop me at any point, okay? So everybody ready to begin? We all right? Yeah, perfect, lovely. So let me just share my screen. No, wrong screen, that one. Okay, so hopefully now you can see a slide that doesn't have my notes on it that says something like Jigsaw Discovery Tool Foundation Workshop. And yep, yeah, perfect, lovely, that is wonderful. So what I'll just do, I'm just rearranging my screen a little. So what I will do is take you through, so this is the PowerPoint slide, or slide deck that as licensed facilitators, or when I'm delivering workshops, our licensees are delivering workshops, then they have these slides to work through, hence you can personalize it yourself on the front. We then open up and we put this slide up. The thing about people is, now what I'd like you all to just to do actually is to grab a pen and paper. It can just be a scrap piece of paper, that's all you need. So if you've all just got pen and paper, and what I'd like you to do on that piece of paper, I would just like you to write your first and last name, please. Hi, Barbara. Okay, so have we all written our first and last name? What I'd like you to do now is put your pen in the other hand and write your first and last name again, please. Okay, so if you want to unmute yourself, or you can put it in chat, whichever you prefer. What was that like second time around?
Slower.
Slower? Yeah.
Alien.
Sorry?
Alien.
Alien. Yeah, alien. Slower. It felt weird and strange for some people when they're doing that, and it certainly does take a lot longer. And you possibly found yourself having to think more about actually doing it, the formation of the letters and things like that. It just felt awkward. So what I'd like you just to do, I'm not going to say any more about that at the moment, what I'd like you to just do is remember that experience, how it felt when you were writing with your wrong hand. So the next thing I'm going to do is, on your screen in a moment, a picture will come up. It comes up small, but then it blows up to the full screen. And what I'd like you to do when the picture kind of blows up to the full screen is I'd just like you to call out. Now I'm going to try and capture what you say. So just call out what you see in the photograph, okay? So let me just move it on for you. And just continue calling things out, what it is that you actually see in that photograph.
Cave.
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 The sea.
The sea.
Lagoon.
Cliffs.
Rock.
Relaxation.
Foliage.
Holiday.
Relaxation. Holiday. Yeah.
Perfect.
Sunlight.
Sorry?
Sunlight.
Sunlight. Excellent. Okay, so a few things. If we're doing that in the kind of the either virtual or the real world workshop, shall we say, a face-to-face workshop, then we'd actually let that run on a little bit longer and pull it out. But basically, as you were calling things out, I was actually writing those down onto two separate post-its. So on one post-it, do this now. On this post-it here, you can see I've got cave, cliffs, and rock. And on the other post-it, we have got sea, lagoon, relaxation, and holiday. What is the difference between the green post-it, you can see that, that's the one with cave and cliffs, and the orange post-it, when you can see it, between sea and lagoon? How did I decide which should go on which post-it note?
One is more factual and one is more descriptive.
Absolutely, yeah. One on the green, the cave, the cliffs, the rock, those are factual information, and the sea, lagoon, relaxation, holiday, and sunlight on the orange post-it note, those are our interpretations. Now, at a very, very basic level, when a situation occurs, there are two ways that we can look at that situation. Some people will start and home in on the facts of the situation. Others will automatically go to the interpretation, the meaning, the understanding. And that is exactly the same with thinking. When we are thinking we have got a starting place and we have got a secondary backup preference that we can move to. So for example, if I'm the kind of the factual person that sees the rocks, the cliffs, the trees, it doesn't mean to say I can't see the holiday and the sunlight and the relaxation, but they won't be the first things that come to mind. I will first of all see the cave, the cliffs and the trees. Just as with the handwriting. With handwriting, we have a preference. When I said to you, please write your name, then you didn't stop and go, shall I use my left hand, my right hand? You naturally reached out with whichever hand is your preferred hand, and thinking is exactly the same. We have that preference for it. And as you work through the jigsaw, what we're trying to do is to actually find your natural preferences. Because when we're working from our natural preferences, just as with that handwriting, it was so much easier. It actually uses up to 100 times more energy when we're working from a lesser preferred behavior. So it's much more draining on our energy. I didn't ask you with your handwriting, but probably for the majority of us, when we write with our non-preferred hand, the actual quality of that writing isn't as good as it was with our preferred hand. So same in a work situation. If I try to do some work with something which isn't my preference, I can do it, but it's going to be more draining on me. It's going to take me longer, and possibly the quality of it won't be quite at the same standard as somebody who has a strong preference for that type of behavior. So that's the kind of journey that we are going to take you on. So what I'm going to do now is stop this share and move on to the digital pack. So in the workshop, as I said, everybody would get one of the workbooks, the participants packs, which I showed you. So we've got the equivalent now in the digital format. Now the way that this works is the participants can either receive a link to the digital pack in advance of the workshop, or we can give you, as the facilitator of the workshop, a generic link which you can then give out at the beginning of the workshop so that people can't access the pack before you actually want them to. So it can work either way. Let me just stop that share and we'll open the digital pack. Okay, so can you all see now? It says Jigsaw Discovery Tool and it says start the digital pack. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got that on screen. Lovely. Okay, so I should explain, this is already, well, this is version 2.1. We're now on version 2.6, which I should have had live for today, but unfortunately when I opened it up last night, the main chunk of it, which is around the actual physical digital jigsaw, isn't in the pack. We've been working on the front and back end, and to make it easy to load and work on, we've taken out the actual main event, shall we say, and it wasn't put back in before it was loaded onto our technology. So this is version 2.1. So what I'll do is, as we go through it, I'll tell you about what we've changed in the latest version of it, because it is actually evolving and developing all the time. So on the version 2.6, on the front here, there is a space for you to put your name, just as you do often on the front of a workbook, and you'll see why we ask people to do that as we go through the actual pack itself. So we've done the handwriting activities that we've just talked about there. We've done the face cliff activity. So then we ask people to open their workbook up. And we open up a conversation, and this very much links into the face activity that we did, the cliff activity that we did. And this is literally a replica of the hard copy workbook. So there's a quote in by Carl Jung, there's a bit of a preference by myself, an introduction from myself. And then we open up and start to talk about reality. and there's no one such thing as reality. It's not a unique concept. And so we've put all that in the beginning of the workbook. Now, when people are on this page, what they must do at this stage is click on the big arrow and take them onto the next page. Now, we are changing the colour of the background. Well, it'll come in red, but then it will actually go out to a lighter colour, a white, to make it easier on the eyes. But they must scroll through each one of these sections. And that's just all about that whole idea about perception. So you facilitate a conversation around perception at that point. We then move on to the next section, which is where we start to introduce the 3 axes. Now, this is all supported on the PowerPoint. I won't keep flicking backwards and forwards because I'm trying to show you the workbook. But what you would do as a facilitator, normally, I would have the PowerPoint deck up, and then we get the learners to have the workbook open on their desktop, but then just keep shrinking it down when they don't actually need to do anything with the workbook itself. So we get to the understanding preferences. We talk about introducing the 3 axes: thinking, feeling, sensing, intuition, extroversion and introversion. We talk through each one of these axes and do the activities in the workbook as we kind of go. As I say, very much supported by the slide deck. So if we move into the workbook part of it, again, just as in the physical workbook, there's an introduction to introversion and extroversion. And if the participant clicks on the actual tabs at the bottom, it takes them in to explain a little bit more about introversion and about extroversion. From there, it depends, again, there's different ways of facilitating the conversation, and when people do our certification program, we go through different kind of ways of doing this, and now we'll be talking about the different ways of doing it virtually, and we're developing it's not quite complete yet, but there is a virtual session plan actually being written up at the moment for our licensees as well. So we've looked at introversion, we've looked at extroversion. So now it's a case of you as the learner thinking, which is me? Which is kind of my home base? Am I more introvert? Am I more extrovert? So to help learners, what we've done is we've created this little activity. Again, it's in the workbook, the physical workbook. And on here on screen, they can go in and they can tick as many or as few as they actually want to do. And then all we get them to do is add up how many of each on each side. Now, in this version of the workbook, the place that we record this comes at the end of the 3 axes. We're going to look at moving it forward slightly in the workbook. So we've done the introversion, extroversion, we've had conversations about it, etc. We've got the PowerPoints. So then we've decided, okay, so I'll just make it, so 3 to 2. We then move into sensing and intuition, and exactly the same. You click on them, it gives you the information about each one, the slide deck, you talk about, and what we very much encourage the licensees to do. Now, we have generic stories that we tend to kind of use for the open programs and things like that, but we encourage, if you're an in-house facilitator or you're working with a specific client, is to develop stories around the organisation so that they're very relevant to the individuals that you are working with. But we, as I say, just tend to use generic stories in the open workshops. So then again, there's the tick boxes that you can gladly tick away whatever you want on each one of those. Exactly the same for thinking and feeling. You've got the descriptors in, and then you've got, again, as I say, you'd be talking about this, having a bit of a discussion around it. You've got your slides and things, and you'd be ticking away on there. So then we come to the page where we would record them, and this is the page that we're looking to move up slightly in the book. So at this stage, what we're going to ask the learners to do is to actually move the markers, the sliders as they're called, on the actual axes to where they believe their home base is. So are they more introvert or are they more extrovert? So the sliders just quite simply move up and down that axis. So they move the axis, the slider to wherever. On the thinking feeling, they just move again, oops, the slider along. Now, it's not in the current version, I have got to say. In the final version, we are currently working on making it so that when you have moved your sliders and you're happy that they're in the right place, you'll be able to click on a button and then automatically a line will be drawn between the two sliders, okay, wherever those sliders are. Now there is over 300 pieces of coding to go in each one of those 4 quadrants. So there's an awful lot of coding involved in this. We've got the first quadrant done, but it's, yeah, a mind-numbing task, let's put it that way, having to repeat all the coding 300 times for each one of the boxes. So they move the sliders. Now, on the page, if on the page there is the jigsaw face, that face indicates that this page can be downloaded or printed off. So you simply click on the page and it comes up with an option to print. You can save it as a PDF there, or you can take it into print if you prefer to print it. So we again suggest to people they may want to print that off and then actually physically draw the lines on there at the moment, or they might just want to save it for themselves. We then move on. Now here we come to the main kind of the 64-piece jigsaw. So this is very much now replacing the bag with the red bag with all the jigsaw pieces in. This is kind of how we are going to do the jigsaw. So we click start. Now, I will warn you in advance, when we click on start, there is a video. It's a video that you will see first of all of the actual jigsaw that takes you through the instructions of how to do it. That video lasts for, I think it's 3 minutes and 29 seconds. If the facilitator prefers to give out those instructions themselves, then they're very welcome to do so. They can just skip the video. Or it may be that you want to give the instructions and then let them watch the video. That's entirely up to the facilitator. So I'll start it, but then I'll stop the actual video in a moment.
Welcome to your instructional video.
Can you hear the sound?
Your virtual jigsaw
Yeah.
board.
Yeah.
On the next screen, you will see 64 jigsaw pieces like this on the left. You will see a jigsaw board on the right and also a red discard bag.
Okay, so you get the gist of it. It goes through and it will give all the instructions. I'll kind of jump through it and just go on to the next screen. So here we've actually got the jigsaw activity. So as they were going on to explain in the video, you've got your 64 pieces of jigsaw, you've got the red bag that you use to get rid of the pieces that you don't think are like you. The jigsaw pieces all move anywhere you like. Now, if you click on them, leave them where they are and just click on them, they blow up big and then it gives you the meaning of the word. So for those of you who are familiar with jigsaw, you'll know that we have the easy read language, the translation of it. So we've used the easy read language to actually define the actual pieces as well for the definitions on here. So you click on them and you just click on it again and it just goes back. So you can move them into your board and they just simply, as you move them in, they just click into position in the board. It may be say, well, actually, I don't know, I could be objective, maybe I am, maybe I'm not. So you want to consider that one. So you bring these down and drag and drop as many as you want down here because I'm going to come back to those later. You could say, well, yeah, I'm definitely a risk taker. So you put that one in. Now, let's say you say, well, actually, do you know what? I am definitely not structured. No way. So we've dropped that into the red bag. Now, there is actually in the video, there's a word of warning. Once you put something in the red bag, it disappears and you cannot get it back. So now there's no way that I can get structured back out of that bag. So once it's gone, it's gone. So people just need to think about that, because unlike in the real workshop, when they go back to the red bag and sort it out and pull it back out, they can't hear. So you'd go through, and I'll just literally pick any 16. You get your 16 words and you drag and drop them into here. Now, what we suggest, and the way that we've often run this, is we have delivered this in 2 90-minute sessions. So we do a 90-minute session, which gives them time to get to this point and do their actual jigsaw. And then we often will take a break, or it may be that we break there for the day completely, depending on the organisation, and then come back and do a further 90 minutes.
Michelle?
Yes.
When they're dropped into the board, can you take them out, or are they fixed once they're in the board?
No, once they're in the board, you can take them back out.
Right.
Yeah. It's just the only thing you cannot do is take them back out of the bag. So some people will just finish like that. Some people do go on and literally put everything back in the bag because they like it nice and tidy. But your objective is to get to 16 pieces all in the board. We've got our 16 pieces in the board. So now we're ready to move on to the next screen. When we move on to the next screen, this is basically, you can see that that looks like the kind of the jigsaw board. If you can imagine the jigsaw board that I showed you earlier with the 16 pieces of jigsaw in, it very much looks like what you're seeing on screen. At this stage, you can still, if you decide that actually maybe I'm not competitive, I can still go back. And so, oops, no.
Welcome to your instructional.
Sorry, I clicked twice. So I could go back and take competitive back out of my jigsaw and swap it for another piece. And then go back again. I'm back there now with a different piece in. Again, there's the jigsaw face there. So this board can be downloaded and can be printed. We click on next. Now here it is now telling us if we complete our jigsaw, there's no going back. So beyond this point, I cannot now, unless I click back to the jigsaw because I want to change something. But once I click complete jigsaw, there's no going back. So I click on complete jigsaw. And you will see you then get the board come up. Now on this version, the words have obviously come up in the red, yellow, green and blue colours. On the latest version, what we have done, because yellow font is difficult to read particularly, we have made it again like the physical jigsaw, and on the back of the physical jigsaw there is actually now, there used to be dots but they're no longer dots. I'm trying to find the camera, there you go. There is an actual coloured jigsaw. These are all blue. Oh, there's a yellow. There's an actual jigsaw piece. So on the latest version of this, when you come to this screen, instead of seeing the coloured words, you'd literally see coloured jigsaw pieces. So you'd have so many red, so many yellow, so many green, so many blue. And what we're also doing is when we move on to the next screen, they will have actually added up how many red, how many yellow, how many green and how many blue you've got on that screen. It also now says, and the reason that on the new book you put your name on the front cover, which I said about, it actually does say now, so up here, if I put my name on the front cover, it would say Michelle's Jigsaw Board. So the actual name, your actual name goes on it. And again, this can be printed off or saved. So from there, we then click on next. So here we come to the plotting. Now on the new version, there is actually a box here with red, yellow, green and blue, and it says how many red, yellow, green and blue you have got. You physically move the sliders to plot your jigsaw score. And again, like the other gun sight, as I call it, We are currently coding, but there's 300 and some pieces of code in each one of the quadrants again. We're currently coding the quadrants so that a line will automatically be drawn to actually draw the shape. But again, the face is there so you can download it and people can join the dots for themselves, just as they do in the physical classroom at the moment. So any questions so far? Any questions or any comments? There is actually another thing that we've added into the latest version of the workbook is that when you do the classroom-based jigsaw, there is an activity in the classroom-based jigsaw, which, bear with me a second, I think I have got one here. Yeah. Right, there's an activity where everybody gets an envelope, and inside the envelope there are 4 pieces of jigsaw. So you can see there's the red, yellow, green and blue. Now everybody gets that in the physical workshop. Now what we have done in the latest version, which was why I was wanting to show you the latest version, this activity is now in there. So the 4 pieces, you can come onto a screen, the 4 pieces of jigsaw are on the screen and they physically move them into order of most like me to least like me, but again you physically move the jigsaw pieces on screen, because one of the things we're very conscious of was making sure that it is interactive all the way. What we don't want is what's happening like it in here, because I'm showcasing it to you. We didn't want the learners sitting there while the facilitator just talked at them and talked them through things. What we wanted them to do was actually for them to be working on the actual activities and things. So all through it's interactive. So we've got here now, we've got our jigsaw behavioural map. As I say, as soon as we can, we're going to get the edition where it will automatically actually join the dots for you. But in the workshops I've done, I've actually got people to just print them off and join the dots, or save them and join the dots on screen. So then we go on to the...
Can I just ask a question? I really like it doing the jigsaw online like that. Is there people booked to have it done like that soon, or you?
Are people booking to do this now? Do you say? Yes. Yeah, absolutely. We've used it once or twice already. Personally, I've used it, and I've got some of the overseas licensees who are using it at the moment now. So, yeah. So we come to here. So again, this is where we'd now start to introduce and discuss the actual behavioural maps. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Jigsaw framework, we use not only the colours, but we use characters. Now, the reason we use characters is that what I found was that certainly when I was doing situations where we're talking teams, where we were talking in customer service, for example, then I was able to use situations and scenarios using the Jigsaw characters, which meant that I could talk about, so for example, if I go into the characters, our first character is ever ready for action. I could talk about my ever ready character in whatever customer situation or whatever situation the client's organization is in. I could talk about the ever ready character. I could talk about the way that they would interact with some of the other characters, for example. And so you can bring situations alive in a very non-threatening way, because I'm not talking about a specific learner, or I'm just talking about my characters. Now, the fact is that the learners identify themselves, and other people as well, but they identify themselves. And you actually, as you start to go through the characters, you actually see light bulbs going on as people go, so that's why. And then they start to kind of tell their tales and tell their stories about the situation they were in and how the interaction went or didn't go, kind of thing. And they start to kind of, you can see that whole kind of moment, that insight moment taking place. So again, there's different ways of presenting these. But from the actual workbook perspective, the learner has to click on each one of the boxes because I've only clicked on 2 now. If I try and press next, nothing is happening because I can't move on to next until I've clicked that last box. So this is how they may be perceived by other people. Now, I'm a strong ever ready. Do I honestly mean to come across as bossy and overbearing? No, I don't. But I may well come across that way in different situations. So it's something I need to be aware of, that I may well be perceived. It's not saying I am bossy, it is saying I may be perceived by other people as bossy or overbearing, impatient, whatever. And again, this is a place where we use lots of stories and bring the characters very much alive in the workshop. And again, the more we can actually make those stories relevant to the organisation or the specific team, the people that are there, then obviously the better. So we've done the ever ready. Yellow character, ray of sunshine character, again, you'd have to click on, or the learner has to click through each one of the boxes. Now this is something you can get them, excuse me, you can get them to do in their own time if you wish, or because you've got PowerPoint slides and things, you've got a slide deck and activities that you can be doing with them, and they can just use this for reference material, for example, to refer back to, or you might want to actually get them to have the workbook open at the time that you're talking about the characters or going through the characteristic, the behavioural traits. So then we go into caring the harmonisers, the great team member, and again we need to click on each of those boxes, and then we go to our blue, Mr. Huey Blue, and we need to click on each one of those. So we've gone through each one of the actual characters. Now what I will do to save us here, me stopping this share and then sharing the slides and then going back to this share, just for the ease of the showcase, what I will do is just show you the rest of the activities in this workbook, and then I'll take you back to the PowerPoint and show you a couple of the activities that we would normally do at this stage once we've talked about the actual characters and the behavioural map, to actually embed that learning and start people down on that journey of starting to apply that learning and understanding more about the characters and recognising those characters in other people as well. There are some activities that we'll do, so but I'll just show you the end of the workbook. So we click on the next and we come back to this screen that you've seen before. So here we've got a choice. We can either just end the course at that point, and the learners can always go back to the workbooks into these sections, or we can choose to do an activity. So the character spotting activity, which again is in the actual physical workbook, you can actually do this. Now you can do as many or as few of these scenarios as you wish. So if you pick the first one, you can see there are some statements there, and what we do is just move them. These all move around. I haven't read the statement, so I couldn't tell you whether I've got them in the right place or not, but let's assume that I think that's how they should go. I then press submit and it tells me no, I've got it wrong. So I can try again, and then I can go back and this time read the statements. So I know that's there. There you go. I think that should be right. One hopes. There you go, correct. So I can now continue. So when I press continue, it takes me back here. If I want to go in and do some of the other ones, I can do. If I just go in and have a look and decide I don't want to do it, I can come back out of it, or I can go back to the main menu. And the last section, now we have included in the foundation workbook, the physical workbook, it's 2 pages basically on stress. and we are currently working on, and hope to have it out in the next month or so, an actual module, separate module, all on stress. One of the things that we are actually doing with the Jigsaw is we are developing what is called a learning pathway. So what you're seeing at the moment, and the profiling, that's the kind of foundation workshop, as we call it, of the Jigsaw. And then just before actually COVID hit us and we all went into lockdown, we just literally about 2 weeks previously released a leadership module. But we're going to have to revamp the whole thing, because that was very much designed for the physical workshop. We've got big floor mats and things like that, so obviously we're going to have to find different ways of doing those activities. So at the moment, obviously that's not available, so we'll relaunch it, or we're going to launch next, or the first thing that we'll launch now is the stress module. Then there'll be the leadership module. We'll get communication, some teamwork modules, which will focus on both co-located and remote teams, or a blended approach, shall we say, of the two. And then there's various other ones that we're looking at. Conflict is one, sales is another one, customer service is another. So this is a stress one that's in the foundation. So it's just that very kind of touching on stress. So a little bit of an introduction, and then here you click on the characters and it just gives you a few little pointers around stress, and stress in the red, what causes the ever ready character to be stressed, the early signs, ways that you can help, some of the serious signs of stress, etc. Now obviously you can expand on that and build on that just within the foundation, and there's a workshop webinar that we did last week, I think it was, on the 12th, that's on the Jigsaw YouTube channel, which focuses on very much stress and behaviours. So there's a little bit more information in there, but it will be coming out as a full module, as I say, in the next few weeks. And then you just click back, so go back to previous, takes us back there, or you can go just click on any one of the 4 characters in there. And then that's the end of, you just click end and it closes down the program. So before I close down the workbook bit, any more questions on the workbook, or any comments, anything? No, we're on. Okay, so I will stop this share and just go back to the PowerPoint for you. We'll see some. Right, so just let me go into PowerPoint screen. Right, so we're back now to the PowerPoint. I just need to very quickly move on. So there you go. So there's a slide come up now that says for sale. Now this is a generic activity, but again, our in-house licensees, or if we were doing it in kind of an in-house situation, we could tailor a specific activity towards this. But the generic activity, basically, this activity is done following the talk about the 4 characters and understanding more about the profile, your own personal profile. So the scenario here is that you are privately selling your car and you've had a few phone calls, and surprise, surprise, 4 phone calls, and each one you've identified. One is the Ever Ready, one is the Ray of Sunshine, one is a Carey, and the other is Mr. Huey Blue. They're coming to see you later that day. And so the activity is for you to think about, actually, how would you differ your approach? What things are likely to be most important to each one of those characters? And thinking about your actual communication style. So it starts to introduce that whole idea about communication as well. And so we put people into breakout groups or breakout rooms now virtually, give them a few minutes to think about this, and get them to, each group thinks about the red, the yellow, the green, the blue, and how they would differ their approach and their style, and then obviously bring people back and they feed back on that. So I'll just go through the slides here. So then we bring the slides up, and again, just reminding them of the 4 characters as we do the feedback and where they fit into intuition, sensing, thinking, feeling, etc. Then the next thing that we do is show this video. So I will show you the video. The sound is quite quiet to begin with, but then it comes up, the characters, as the characters start to speak. So, no, I've missed it. Bear with me. There we go.
Morning. Good morning, Sarah. How are you?
Good, thanks. You?
Okay, 9 a.m. project meeting. Can we get going? I've got a lot to do today.
Don't we want to wait for everyone to come? Because Jessie's still not here, and she's part of the meeting as well.
Listen, if she's late, she's late. That's not our problem. As you know, we're currently behind on 3 areas of our critical path, and we have to get these finished today. We're also behind on budget, so we've got to do it without incurring any more costs.
I got your bike at the weekend. It's got all the gadgets. I'll tell you later. I've got 9 o'clock. See ya. Bye. Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey, Jessie. How are you? How's the family?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Guys, can we just focus on the task at hand?
Yeah, sure. Who had the action points from the last meeting?
Okay, I have copies for everyone and the agenda that I sent out earlier. Now, I've been analyzing the Gantt chart and I've identified 3 process areas that we can make improvements in within the operations team that I think will address all of these issues.
Have you actually spoken to the operations team? Because they're not part of this meeting, and a lot of the decisions are going to impact them, so maybe they should be a part of it.
Listen, before we go out to the business units, we need to ensure that we've got the action points nailed down, rather than going to them with a bunch of fluff.
Okay, sounds like a good idea. Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't we get a load of ideas on paper? So who's got a few ideas? Shout them out. Ideas?
Hold up. This was not on our agenda, guys. We need to do this logically because remember, our suggestions have to be grounded in reality. There is no point giving them 50 ideas that make no sense.
I actually agree with Jessie on this because, you know, everyone gets a chance to have something to say, and 4 heads are better than 1. Can we at least agree on that?
Can we just get 3 action points on the board in the next 30 minutes?
Okay, so then we facilitate discussions around those characters, ask people what they actually observed around each character, and then get them to actually identify them with one of the 4 jigsaw characters. So the first lady that comes up on screen, any ideas? Red, yellow, green or blue?
Yellow.
Yellow, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The yellow, absolutely. And then this lady?
I'd say blue.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The blue, because there was all the organisation. She was the first there. She got everything laid out. She'd got all agendas there, etc. So very, very organised. And then the gentleman.
Red.
Red, absolutely. Red. Can we just get down to the business? Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, the last gentleman was our green Carey character. So it just helps to bring the characters alive. People start to actually identify the traits, the behavioural traits and things in other people. Now, obviously, we appreciate that within the video, they are very much overplayed, shall we say. Although you do come across 1 or 2 people that have these really strong preferences. But it helps people to start to identify these traits in other people. So then, from there, we can then move into a number of different activities, focusing on different things. Now, these are optional activities on the foundation programme. It really depends on what you're trying to achieve with it, how long you've got, etc. But one of the activities is we divide people up into their preference groupings. And we basically, oops, sorry, I went 1 stage too far. And basically what we asked them to do is, so we'd put them into breakout rooms in the virtual workshop, and we'd ask them to put together a presentation on how to approach them at work, what behaviours cause stress, so what do other people do that cause stress for them or frustration, and what value does their colour actually bring to the team. So they go away, you give them time to kind of work together in a breakout room, come back with, again, it depends on the level of how used they are to technology, whether or not you get them to do screen share presentations back or you just get them to talk about it. Really, again, that's up to the facilitator to decide what's kind of best for that particular group. Now, the music you started to hear was, we again, just for a little bit of fun actually, and to create and continue that kind of interaction and engagement, rather than saying, okay, who wants to go first, or picking on a group to go first, we play a piece of music. And when the music starts to play, we ask them, which colour do you think this is the theme song for? So, quite fun. So, which colour do you think that's the theme song for?
Green.
Green, absolutely. So that's for the green character. Oops. I'm a bit trigger happy today with my mouse. So our next one.
Red.
Red, yellow, green, blue?
Red.
Red, yeah, absolutely. So that's our red. And my slide is jumping so far ahead. There you go.
Blue.
Blue, absolutely. And then last but not least. There you go. So again, it's just a way of creating that engagement, a bit of fun, keeping it light-hearted. And then the thinking, feeling axes come into there. So then if you wanted to talk about teams, what if a team were all the same colour? Facilitate a discussion around that. Now, one of the things that you can do on the PowerPoint is, when people have created their jigsaw profiles and they've got their red, yellow, green, blue scores, if you get them to share their scores, now they can either share it just privately with you as facilitator, you can put it into chat and get them to share them all together, which is something that we certainly do encourage that to happen. But if people didn't want to do that, or you felt it inappropriate, you could get them to share it privately in chat. And this is one of the reasons why we suggest that you have that kind of 90-minute, 2 90-minute sessions. So there's always a break in the middle. Because if you get their scores in, what you can then do is, in the background of the PowerPoint, there is an Excel spreadsheet. And you go into the Excel spreadsheet and you can put in the people's name and their scores. What that then does is it populates this next chart. So this would actually be, if you were a team, this would be all your scores. Now your names at first don't come up. So we show this and we say, okay, give us let's do a bit of a SWOT analysis on this team. What are your thoughts around this team? And they say whatever about the team. And then we click onto the next slide and say, well, actually, that's your team. So how does that now relate? How much aligned is your team profile with the work that your team, so we're talking collectively about the team, with the work that your team actually is required to do? And one of the things you can do is what we call a pro forma profile for the team. So you can actually go through the main duties of the team and actually colour code the duties of the team, and then you can relate, or compare, should I say, the team profile with the tasks profile, and see how they correlate together. And that can be a really powerful kind of way of opening up a conversation. I worked with a team once, and they were a team of accountants actually in a local authority. Their FD was very red, with some blue in. And I knew him quite well, and he actually came to me and said, look, can you come and work with my team? Because he said, they are such lovely, lovely people. He said, we have a great time at work. You know, they really enjoy working there. But he said, actually, for performance-wise, it's terrible. He said, it is so disorganized. So fine, we got the team together, we did the profiles, and the accounts manager, he was very strong in yellow with some green and a bit of red and a bit of blue. Now, he had been deliberately recruited for his kind of yellowness because he was the complete opposite to the FD. So the FD actually wanted to recruit somebody who was the opposite to himself to have that whole kind of approach. But unfortunately, the team manager had gone away and recruited all like-minded people. So he'd got a team, an accounts team, that were very, very dominant yellow. And literally at that point, they were operating 4 different accountancy systems. So invoices were coming in and going on 4 different systems. So much duplication of work. And through doing this, we were able to open up that conversation, and the light bulbs came on, shall we say, and they had those moments of insights, and with some kind of coaching, both from ourselves and internally, they were then able, and they went on and literally turned the whole thing around. So that's kind of the power, and there's various other activities that you can do around kind of teams, but certainly that comes up within, you've got the ability to create that team profile within the PowerPoint. The other way that you can do it, again, depending on the technical abilities and confidence really on the individual learners, is you can also do it through a Google Docs and share a Google spreadsheet or something like that, and they can put their own scores in there that you can then just copy and paste into the PowerPoint.
So you know when you just said, what does this team look like? And
yeah.
It's got the names on the left, so would you show him one that hasn't got the names?
Yeah, the first slide that comes up.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just missed that. Sorry.
That's all right, don't worry, no problem. And then you just
had to go and make some food for my children.
Yeah, it's all right, no problem. And then you click on it, and then the names are there.
It's really good. It's a good way of doing it.
Yeah. And that's really the kind of the package, the foundation that brings you to the end, and it just goes into kind of the action planning section on the slides, and you take that into whichever direction that you want, depending on what you're wanting to achieve out of it. So any questions or comments or anything at all? If anybody's got any feedback about it, you know, we are literally, it is evolving day by day by day. As I say, we're on version 2.6 at the moment. That's the one I was hoping to have for you today. But as I say, really the main additions are just kind of a few cosmetics, and the 4 cards, jigsaw cards, are the kind of the big addition on that one.
I don't know if I missed I think I missed the very, very beginning. I joined when people were writing their names. Are you like looking for people to buy the license? What are you actually asking for of me?
I'm not particularly asking anything of anybody.
Right.
What we're trying to do at this stage is that it's just because the digital version is new. I've done some workshops specifically for licensees, and we'll continue to do another 1 or 2 of those. But then literally going forward, we will be probably doing showcases 1 a month or something like that. The idea being that there's people, I mean, there's a couple of people in this group today who are already certified. There's people that have attended webinars and things, people like yourself that have obviously delivered workshops with yourself. So there's a whole mix of people, and it's really open to anybody who is interested in finding out a little bit more about the jigsaw. It may be that they're looking for some training for their organisation. It may be that they're looking to license it either within their organisation or as an independent training provider, or it could just be that they've just got an interest in seeing what it's about, and that's absolutely fine. So really that's, you know, the purpose of doing it is just to get it out there, to let people see it, and just, put it out there.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Sorry everyone, this is Donna. I need to leave,
Okay,
But
Donna.
Michelle, I've sent you an email with some questions specific to my organisation.
Yeah.
But before I wanted to say thanks. Really love the virtual platform.
Good.
Deliver it.
Excellent.
Thanks,
Thanks, Donna.
Bye.
I'll catch up with you. Thanks.
Bye.
Yeah, I'll email you as well with some questions I've got.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
absolutely
Yeah,
fine.
that's good.
Yeah, I will be, as I say, I will send out for the people that attended, I will send you a link so you'll be able to access the digital workbook yourself.
Yeah.
It'll be live for about a week or so, something like that. So you've got time to kind of have a go at it and work way through the workbook for yourselves. And then if you've got any questions, either I'm happy to answer any now, or if you've got questions later, you can kind of think about, drop me an email, you've got my details and things. There will be monthly webinars where we're talking further about the jigsaw. So the next one, I'm just trying to think what that's going to be around, is around leadership and empathy in leadership, and kind of leadership for the new norm, whatever that is for anybody. So that's the kind of the monthly webinars.
Is it traditionally people that work in Obviously, I work for a very large university.
Yeah.
So would it be somebody in the HR department that you would expect to get certified, or any manager?
Any managers? I mean, yes, in an awful lot of organisations, it is the L&D, HR kind of people that do. We have got other organisations. I've got one local authority in Scotland, and literally, slowly but surely, we're virtually going through all their kind of team leaders, and they're all becoming certified, because it can be used as a coaching tool as well. So it's not just about delivering group workshops. Some people do use it for kind of coaching one-to-ones and things like that. So we, you know, again, it's anybody who feels that they could use it either in that coaching situation, a group delivery situation, in-house or externally.
And how long does it take to get certified?
It's a 2-day certification with a follow-up after that, which is a couple of hours kind of follow-up, something like that. I'm a little bit vague on it, because we're just kind of tweaking the certification process to make it more suitable for kind of virtual delivery, and there's possibly going to be a bit more kind of self-knowledge development kind of in it initially, and then some live virtual sessions and things like that. Pre-COVID, it was a 2-day with an assessment. Okay. So it'll be a similar kind of time.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Okay.
That's good.
Anything else from anybody? Or no? Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Michelle.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll be in touch.
you.
All right. Thanks a lot.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.